Welcome to The Exchange Life. Hi, I'm Tony Taylor, and I'm glad you joined me today. And I have my good friend here, Butch Morrison, is going to be with us today. And tell you, I believe that we have a word for you today, a good time of some teaching here today that we're going to do today, Butch. And so Butch is one of my colleagues, one of my friends, and he mentors me a little bit here. And so we're going to talk about today, Butch. We're just going to get right into it because I know you can be kind of long-winded at times.
Come on, man.
I can too. I mean, But I want to talk a little bit about the flesh today because a lot of times, we talked, and a lot of times, and we're going to be doing a show on what it means to be crucified. We're going to talk about that. But I think a lot of people, what happens is they do have a born-again experience, but then they're dealing with all this flesh. They're dealing with all this stuff. And they say, wait a minute, I'm born again. And a lot of times I've heard teachings where you got two natures. You got the good you got the fleshly side of you and everything. And so I want to talk about that today. Now, in Galatians chapter 5, verse 16, verse 18, I'm just going to read that, and then we're going to go over into Romans, but I'm going to read that. It says, "But I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not carry out the desires of the flesh. For the flesh sets its desires against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. For these are in opposition to one another, so that ye may not do the things that you please. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law." Now, under the law, that's a whole other topic that we can talk about. But we're gonna. But right now, I want to define what that flesh is. Now, in Romans chapter 8. And I think it's 9 around 12, it says, "You are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit. If indeed the Spirit of God dwells in you, therefore, brethren, we are debtors not to live according to the flesh." So I want to talk about that because I think there's a lot of confusion there. And why do I want to lean toward my flesh sometime? And when we say we walk in the Spirit, sometimes people get real spooky with it.
Yeah.
Right. But I would say it means that we walk agreeing with what God says about us. And I believe here he empowers us. If he tells us not to walk in the Spirit, not to walk in the flesh, then he empowers us and gives us that ability to not walk in the flesh. Right. But I want to talk about the flesh, and we're going to talk about that, is the difference between walking in the Spirit and walking in the flesh. And I think we want to, first of all, let's talk about flesh. Okay. What is that flesh? Because I'm born again now.
Right.
I'm born again, but yet I still have the same propensity as the world. I still, have those desires and those things of the world. So let's talk about that.
Okay. When we were born in the flesh. And what it means is when we were born separated from God. We were born as a sinner, so we're separated from God. We don't have God as a resource. And so whenever God created us, he created man with three God-given needs. He created man with the need for love and acceptance, which is two sides of the same coin. I've had people that loved me that didn't accept me. Then I've had people that accepted me that didn't love me. And you have too. I'm sure you've done that. And then the other need that he created us with is the need for worth and value. Everybody wants somebody to validate their worth for them. I mean, we get it validated. Men get their worth validated a lot of times through their jobs, and women get their worth validated through their home, through their kids, and things like that. So, but these are God-given needs, and when I say God-given needs, that means that if God's the only one that can fully meet these needs. Let's just say, and I'm going to cover that third one in a minute. Let's just say you're on a scale from 1 to 10. This all fits in with the flesh. On a scale from 1 to 10, that we're made for a 10. To these needs, but the best that a human can ever meet those needs is a 4 or a 5. And what we do when we're born, we have these significant people around us, and we're looking for them to meet those needs. And the third need is the need for competence. Not only am I worth something, that I can do something. And God, if you go back to Genesis, you can find that those three needs were given to Adam. Even the competence one, he said, name these animals. He didn't tell him how to name them or anything. You're competent enough to name these animals. He showed them their worth when he provided all the garden for them and everything there. And the love and acceptance, he walked with them in the cool of the evening. So Adam had those three needs. Eve had those three needs. Well, they failed, as we know the story, okay? They still had the three needs. And so we're born in the likeness of Adam, not in
Right.
likeness of God. We're
Right.
born in the flesh, and we're born with those three needs, and we're trying to get them met. And what we do when we're in Adam and we're not in God, we don't have anybody else to meet those needs but a human being. And so we begin to form flesh. And what that flesh is me trying to get these legitimate God-given needs met in illegitimate ways. And we can be real creative in that. Somebody hurt me, somebody reject me, then I'm going to reject you back. I'm going to reject that person back because they didn't meet a need for me. I was trying to get a need met from them, and they didn't meet up to the standard, and so I'm rejecting them back.
And that goes back to the relationships, because I will always say this is that this Bible here is about a desire for a relationship with a people. Simple.
Exactly. Just
simple.
that, yeah.
That's simple.
Not complicated.
It's not complicated at all. And so what you're saying is being born in sin, of being born for the likeness of Adam, is that we begin to desire to dictate or do things our own way or provide for ourselves.
Because that same temptation that Eve had, you can be like God. We're born in that way. We want to be like God. We want to try to get these needs met. So we form flesh, which is ways that we have formed, habits and patterns that we have formed throughout life while we were in Adam, trying to get these needs met.
Right.
And it's just like any habit and pattern. Like when I wear my watch on my left arm, because it's just a habit.
Habit of pattern,
and if I were to take it off and put it on my right arm, and you asked me what time it was in 15 minutes, I'd look at my left arm, not my right arm.
Right.
And so these habits and patterns, you can't undo the habits. You can form new habits, but you can't undo those habits, and these patterns are set. So that is the flesh. When we get saved, we're not separated from God. Jesus Christ comes in and lives inside of us in our spirit. So now we have a resource, but that flesh doesn't go away. Adam is dead. The old man is dead. Like you said a while ago, we don't have two natures.
Right.
Adam is dead. And so it talks about in Romans about being crucified.
We're going to
talk about that later.
We're going to be doing it.
So anyway, what we have is we still have those old habits and patterns. It's like a car using oil. If you've got a car that's using oil, it comes down the road and it's got this big old smoke screen behind it, so to speak. That car gets gone, but that smoke is left over. The old man's gone; he's dead. But those habits and patterns that were formed while we were in Adam, we still got them. And so here we come. We now have Jesus as our resource. He's living inside of us. And let's just say somebody hurts me now that I'm a Christian. I got two options now. I only had one before. Now I got option two, which, I can either trust myself, which is my flesh. And let me ask you this question. On this earth, who does Tony trust more than anybody else in this world? Tony Taylor, right? Just like me. I'm going to trust Butch Morrison on this earth more than anybody else. So guess what? I've got this situation where somebody's hurt me. I've got two options. I can either trust myself, and I'll be walking after my flesh. I'm not in the flesh anymore, but I'm walking after my flesh. Because now I'm trusting myself to solve this problem, to make this go away, to make life work through this. Or I can trust Christ. When I trust Christ with this situation, it's like, okay, Lord, I can't handle this. I don't have the resources to handle this. I don't have them. And I know if I try to handle them, I'm going to mess it up. So I'm going to trust you with it. And here's something to be really careful about. When we're trusting Christ with a situation, we don't need to have it planned out how that's going to turn out. Yeah. Because it's just like the blind man. He put mud in a blind man's eye.
Right.
I'm sure the people that, that was around there, and they said, why would he put mud?
Right.
Jesus does his own thing his way.
Right.
And we don't need to put him on a timetable.
Right. And this is one of the things, though, that what I'm learning is that this new nature that I have and the old man has gone, then my new nature that I have is in Christ.
Yes.
That I'm now in Christ.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things when you talk about trusting is that I cannot trust in my ability, but I can trust that the one who lives in me, who resides in me.
Yes.
I'm in Christ. I've been hidden in Christ. And I think one of the things, these habits that they've established over a lifetime, one of the things that can be difficult is allowing Christ to rule. But that's why it says in Romans, the real change, see you can become born again, but the real change is having that transformation.
Yeah.
That our mind is being renewed.
And a lot of people get the cart before the horse. When I got saved at 28 years old, I was going to a traditional church. I didn't know anything about the exchange life. I didn't know anything about Christ being my life.
Right.
I could hear this phrase, Christ was in me and I was in Christ.
Right.
I didn't know what that
Right.
meant, okay? So I was still out there trying, quote, trying to live the Christian life.
Right, trying.
You know, what I figured out, nobody can live the Christian life. I don't know if people believe that or not, but nobody can live the Christian life. Only one person ever did, and that was Jesus.
That's right.
Now, he wants to live his life in me
Right.
and then express his life through me, okay?
Right.
So,
But you know, it's going back to this flesh, because like you're saying is that if I've been rejected, like you said, that love of acceptance. Now, if a person has been rejected all their life, then they put up this defense mechanism. Then automatically they're on the defense a lot of times because they've been rejected, they've been hurt, and all of this has you know we talked about this, what your parents said about you, what your friends or what the teacher said about you, or what cousin Bubba said about you, or whoever, when you're growing up, all that has something to do with your flesh.
exactly. It helps develop your flesh because you're what I call lie-based living. So these people reject you, and they give you. What happens is you get rejected, and you all of a sudden start developing an identity from that. Say, some people might say, because of what everybody has done me, all these people that have been important in my life, they've sent me a message that says I'm unimportant. We'll say, okay, or I'm in, whatever. Let's just use the word unimportant. Right. So what you do if you start living that lie-based life, then you're going to try to prove to everybody else that you're not unimportant, and that's where your flesh operates. And what you do is you believe the lie, and what everybody else has told you, and those tapes are in there playing. Every time somebody rejects you, you say, well, here I go again. I'm unimportant. And when Christ comes in, he says, wait a minute, Tony. Let me tell you who you really are.
Who you really
are my child. You are my son. You have been accepted in the beloved. I loved you with everlasting love. You are worth the death of my son, and on and on.
But the same thing that developed this flesh life, and we're talking about this flesh. What makes this flesh life is the over and over occurrence of rehearsing and people speaking death in your life and those kind of things. Or even acceptance. I mean, they can accept you. It's gonna require now that the transformation come as we renew our mind according to what God says about us.
As I said, I was trying to be transformed without my mind being renewed.
Right.
And it says we are transformed by the renewing of our mind. And what that mind's being renewed from is from this lie-based living to a truth-based living.
Right.
And whatever God says is truth.
Right.
Whatever he says about you, whatever he says about himself, whatever he says about others, truth. And so when we start believing what he says about us rather than what these other people that reject us say about us, then we can, at that point, we can start, okay, Lord, I can trust you. Right. And now it's a long way. Because you know what, Tony, I found it's easier to believe a lie than it is the truth. Because we go by our own performance. Right. And Jesus don't look at my performance.
And I was just thinking about that, even in flesh, of how we perform.
Exactly. That's how most of it's formed.
For that acceptance. I mean, you told me a story about you played football and you was always a small guy. And you tell me a little bit about that, about performance.
Yeah, I just had to do more than anybody else because I was smaller just about I wasn't the smallest one on the team, but I was pretty small on the team. And whenever the coach gave me an opportunity one day to earn something, to perform, if I performed to a certain level, I could earn something. Well, I met that standard. Matter of fact, he acknowledged that at our practice on Thursday. He said, you practice better than anybody else on this team. You did this, this, and this. He said, but you're not big enough to wear this other uniform, so I'm gonna give it to somebody else. And see, all that performance.
How did that deflate you, though?
I kept that. I got angry at that coach that day, and I had unresolved anger at him for 35 years. That's how it affected me. Because I'm a teenager. I'm 15 years old at this point in time. And I was walking 7 miles home to practice.
All right. So you still
I wanted to play.
Now
I've already forgiven.
You said, man, I walked 7 miles and he didn't give me no you. But listen, now, with that being said, in our flesh, don't you think that a lot of times we relate to our Father?
Oh yeah,
the same way in the flesh. Yeah. So then, how did you look at God? How being born again?
Exactly.
Now did you feel like you had to perform for Him to be blessed by Him?
Great statement, absolutely. Because see, I didn't know that I had been accepted in the beloved. I mean, I could read that, right, but I didn't know that because I had never been accepted. I was always having to perform to be accepted. And so that became one of my flesh patterns. I mean, I could perform with the best of them. Every now and then I would get rewarded for that, but sometimes I didn't get rewarded for it. But what did I do? I would redouble my effort. And then when you have to, some people get raising the bar. You got to do better. And when I came into the ministry, to pastoring, you talking about, I was laid up with, I mean, I was performing like crazy. Now, I didn't understand this. I trusted God, and I would pray.
Right.
But listen, I know when people telling me that the fastest growing church in America, where the pastor's the CEO, and you need to get out here and do it, yada, 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 yada. Listen, I was performing. I know I was performing. God gave me grace through that. But the only way we ever come to understand the difference between the flesh and the spirit is we have to be brought to the end of our performance, the end of ourselves. When we say, this ain't working.
Right.
Excuse my English, but this ain't working.
Yeah.
You know, just like I worked so hard to get that uniform, and then I didn't get that uniform.
Right.
This ain't working.
So what did you, with that and how our flesh thinks, so what did you begin to think about that coach?
Oh, I didn't like him at all. He rejected me. And so I was going to try to hurt him back. And so I would try to tell everybody what he did to me, trying to hurt him. Now, he's dead and gone now, okay? And he was dead and gone the night I forgave him. But it was like every time, even like when my kids grew up, and if a coach, and they were all athletes, if I ever sensed that a coach ever mistreated them in any kind of way, I was ready to take that coach's head off. Simply because it always went back, all the way back to 35 years. Well, it's been more than 35 years.
And this is the crazy thing about the flesh, though, is that coach probably didn't have any idea.
No, he didn't know. I guarantee he didn't
have any idea.
No, he didn't.
You know, he might have said that it might have been cruel to you, but he didn't have any idea what he did at that moment.
And I'm really,
I mean, not even with malice in his heart.
I'm 15 years old at that point, and I'm still a child, you might say, okay? And children are the best observers, but the worst interpreters. I mean, he only had one uniform to give, and the guy that broke his leg that wore that uniform, he was 6'2". Okay, he was right. I couldn't wear it,
Right,
you know?
right.
But I didn't see it that way that day.
Because
I saw it as you rejecting me. You told me to meet a standard, and I did.
met
I
the
met it,
standard.
and you didn't come up with you didn't fulfill your work, and it made me suspect of all coaches. It made me suspect. When I got in business, I was real suspect of people. They would tell me one thing, but I would never, like when I'd sell a John Deere tractor, that was John Deere dealer. When I'd sell a tractor, you know when I knew that sale was completed? When we signed the contract or he gave me the check. It just makes you, and it makes you real suspicious of people. But we just keep on. I know I couldn't get them met there, my need met there, so what I do? I'm gonna try somebody else to get my need met. I'm gonna try something else to get my need met. Because I want to fit in. Everybody wants to fit in. They want somebody to validate their worth.
Right.
And that day, my worth was crushed. It was crushed. And then I go to another school, and I go out for the baseball team. And I played baseball just out of school. I lettered in baseball. So I said, he came out to me one day. He said, you can't play baseball for me. You didn't play football for me. So here we go again. Yeah. Another coach. Right? So that just builds upon it. And and what you do, you begin to where you don't trust anybody. And that's flesh. Now, I wasn't a believer in those days. I had walked an aisle at 9 years old, but I did that because my sister went down. So I didn't get saved. I was 28 years old, but I didn't even know this at 28. So all of that flesh, and you're going to carry it to the grave. I'm going to carry mine to the grave. And because of my size, that I'm small, because of my size, I've got a flesh that says I've got to prove myself everywhere I go. And it's a rat race.
And I think one of the most interesting things, and we're talking about the flesh, walking in the Spirit, and simply walking in the Spirit, it means I begin to agree with what God says about me. Who He says I am, what He says I can have, even what He's called me to.
And you trust Him in situations.
And trust Him. I was just thinking the other day, I was thinking about some personal plans of mine, and I was just talking to him, and I said, well, you know what, God? I said, your plan's a whole lot better than mine. So I'm just going to yield to your plans. I said, because you can do exceedingly abundantly above all that you ask or think. And I've got these plans that I want to be here in 3 years or 4 years and financially and different things. And I got to thinking, I said, well, those are my plans, but, you know, I believe you got greater plans.
Exactly.
That your plans are better than my plans. And I said, you know, you can do exceedingly abundantly above all that we could ask or think. But it just took me down there because I was scratching my head trying to figure this out. How can I make this work? And you know what? It's the point of just trusting Him and knowing that He is for you and not against you.
And the hardest thing about trusting Him, Tony, the battle for me to trust Him, It's because I have to come to the conclusion that when I trust Him, I cannot expect how that's going to turn out.
Right. Well,
I mean, I can't expect, because if I can't work it out,
Right.
then why should I have any idea of how He's going to work it out?
And this is the thing, though. This is why we walk. You know, I looked at Adam. When Adam walked, they said he walked with him in the cool of the day, and he had this relationship with him. And it all goes back to me. The relationship is that when we're walking with Him in a relationship and understanding that we have a self-worth with Him, is that He just speaks to us on a consistent basis, and we just begin to walk it out with Him, and we're not concerned about tomorrow, because we know that He's got us, you know, and those kind of things. But this thing with the flesh, though, is in a believer's life, is that I think one of the things that get us tripped up is that then we want to talk about, are we saved or not? You know, because we're going through this difficult time that, you know what, I'm not going to walk according to His word. I'm going to walk in my flesh, and I'm going to meet my needs. And this is what I love about the Lord. He gives us a free will.
He does.
But you know what I've learned even in my own life, and a free will is that He gives me a free will. He tells us you walk in the Spirit, you don't walk out to the flesh. But if I choose to walk out of the flesh, He gives me a free will, but I can't control the outcome.
No, the circumstances He'll choose.
Yeah, I can't control.
Yeah.
If I choose to walk, now we know that the Bible says that all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord, that are called according to His purpose. So He's got me over there. I'm walking in the Spirit.
Yeah.
I may not know how it's going to turn out, but I know that it's going to be all right with Him. But in this free will is when I make a decision to walk in the flesh, is I can make a decision to do that, but I cannot control the outcome.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason a lot of people think that they're not saved because they do some, as a believer, they do some things that just they can't even believe they did these things. Well, it's because they're measuring. They were so raised in a performance-based acceptance Christianity. And when they're raised like that, then you come in to know Jesus Christ. Well, guess what? Unless somebody shares with you that it's no about performance anymore, you're accepted like you are. Then they start failing, and they say, well, I don't believe I'm even saved. Well, let me tell you something. I've got 4 kids, okay? And they're all my children. They've got my blood running through their vein, and their mother's blood running. And no matter what my kids do, no matter what they do, I can never deny that they're my kids. Because they have my blood. I have a blood relationship. And that's the same. When Jesus shed His blood for my sin, that gave me a blood relationship. I'm His child by blood and by birth. And I can't ever lose that. Once we understand that there's a difference between walking in the flesh and according to the flesh. Now, if we lost, we walk in the flesh all the time. But if we're saved, then we can walk according to our flesh or the Spirit. We don't have 2 ways we can live. We can live according to the Spirit or by the Spirit, in the Spirit, or we can walk according to our flesh.
And that's why it's important. We were talking earlier about church, and sometimes you feel like you're so churched out,
oh,
if you know
goodness.
what I mean. But the importance of church should be to disciple.
Yeah. Exactly. And
I mean, mentoring and discipling and all that hand in hand and connecting with people. That is the real reality of it. Is that the church needs to be discipling, and this a lot of times we go to church and just hear some guy, preach about something, but a lot of times that may not be what we call discipling, and so that's very, very important, because we hear things, What do you mean walking in the flesh? What do you mean walking in the Spirit? I mean, the Spirit, is something spooky? Is there something? And it's not. And it's not that at all. But man, our time is running out. I tell you, this is good. Now, how can people get more information about this?
Okay, you can call Crossway Ministries in Anderson, South Carolina. It's
they'll put it up on the screen.
Okay, you're going to put it on the screen.
Yeah, they'll put it on the screen.
There's an answer machine. You'll leave a message, and you just leave the message and say you want to talk with somebody about have biblical counseling, you want to talk to somebody about the Scriptures. You just make that call, and somebody will pick that message up, and they'll direct that message to whoever needs to take it. And we do not charge for our services. We ask that you give a donation if you're able to do it, because we have to keep our doors open.
Yeah.
But this is the message that we give.
Right. And so simply this right here, today we've been ministering on the flesh. We wanted to define when it says if we're not walking in the Spirit, we're walking in the flesh. Well, we're in this earthly suit, and I know we see this as flesh, but what it means is simply this: flesh is a habitual attempts apart from Christ to control getting needs met, or to cope when they are not met. That's what the flesh is my way of getting things done.
Habitually.
Habitual, my ways of getting things done. And as I was living a life in sin, there were needs that I had to meet.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, even in our marriages, it's crazy. And one thing I'm realizing is that you look at a person to meet your needs. You're looking at that wife to meet your needs.
And there's no way
You're
they can
looking
do
at that
it.
man. But
we
that's,
do it.
But that's how we've been taught, though.
Exactly.
That's how we've been taught.
I just say this a while ago, but I believe this with all my heart on those needs. I believe that's what drives every single human being on this earth is trying to get those needs met.
Yeah, but you said a part we were discussing. You said that people even die.
They will do whatever it takes
trying to get their needs
get them met, even if it kills them.
Even if it kills them.
Even if it kills them. Like somebody that's have a peer, they go and they're having this worth issue, and they find somebody that's a peer that really recognizes them, and they want them to do some drugs or alcohol.
Yeah.
So eventually, if they keep trying to get that need met through that, they're trying to kill a pain from being rejected.
Right.
Well, that can become a habit. It becomes something that can kill them.
Well, we've even looked at even serial killers or mass shootings. That this person didn't feel self-worth, so they would do something horrendous to bring some attention to feel this self-worth. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. You've been in law enforcement, you probably remember the Columbine thing. I don't know how many years ago. Read in the Anderson paper the next morning a note that one of those guys that left. He, every one of those needs were in that note that he left.
Yeah.
He was trying to get those needs met. And see what he ended up committing. So he took his own life, I think.
Yeah.
But look at the lives he took of other people.
Right. And that's what happens when we walk in the flesh. But people, our time is running out, and I hope this has been a blessing to you. I hope this has shed some light. And maybe you're struggling. Maybe you're struggling with these habitual things of you trying to meet your needs. But I'm telling you, you need to get in the Word and find out what God says about you. I'm going to say what my Father says about me, who He says I am, and begin to agree with Him. And that's walking in the Spirit and understanding that you don't have to walk this. Christ is in you. We have the Holy Spirit that's in us and dwells in us, and we can walk it out that way. Well, I'm glad you joined us today. Our time is winding up, and it just flies, and you're going to be doing some more broadcasts with us, some more shows, and you're such a blessing to me, and I know you're a blessing to the people out there and everything. But listen, if you'd like to give to this ministry, call me. They're going to put my number up on the screen to call me. You can look me up on Facebook. They're going to put that information up as well. Love you to hit me up on Facebook as well. We're just walking this out by faith, man. We're coming in. We're doing these productions, and we're believing God for the money to come in. So, if God is speaking to you about giving into this ministry or sowing, however you want to put it, we'd love to hear from you. So give me a call, and we can talk to you about how to do that. Well, I tell you, it's been a pleasure.
Amen.
And we got some more shows that we got to do here,
All
some
right.
more broadcasts here, and we're going to do some things, and we know the people are going to be blessed. Well, my time's running out. We love you, and we look forward to hearing from you very, very soon. I tell you what.